It's been so long. In Adrienette Fanfiction, Part 35. I'm gonna ask her, Adrian says with vigor. Flag rolled his eyes. What a shocker, he drawled out sarcastically. Adrian shot him a look. Really, I'm nervous. What should I do? He wondered out loud. Adrian raked his hands through his hair. Flag stared at him with a deadened look. Didn't know what to do. The plan could be quite simple, really. All the kid really needed to do was ask, Hey, do you want to go to the dance with me? And then she would say yes, and all would be well. Of course, it couldn't be that easy, because when was it ever? So Flag had to deal with the emotions again. I don't know, kid. Just go ask her. You're overthinking it, Flag snapped bluntly. The blonde-haired boy groaned into his hands. No, I don't want to just ask her questions. I want to do something. Maybe a poster board or something? One of those fancier gestures? Adrian cried out. Flag had to admit, Adrian put effort into these things, and though to him it was ridiculous, one could say that it was sweet. And okay, that was one thing that was definitely not Flag, so you should ask one of your friends, the ones that actually like this kind of stuff. She's quite literally Marinette's best friend, right? Flag pointed out. Adrian's eyes lit up, as if he hadn't thought of that idea right before. Actually, it didn't even faze Flag that it didn't. Great idea, Adrian cried, picking up his phone to call his friend. Flag sighed and devoured yet another piece of cheese. Hey, Alia, Adrian said. There was some buzzing on the other side of the call, probably Alia and her pleasantries. Yeah, so I need some help, Adrian said. He began to pace around the room. At that point, Flag had tuned him out and decided to do his own little thing. Flickering his eyes around, Flag noted that Adrian wasn't looking his way and quickly flew up and swooped underneath the door, leaving the room. As per usual, the hallways of the house were empty. Flag always picked a busy time to go on his flights. If anyone was coming, he'd hear. The gorilla had seriously loud footsteps that were like a dinosaur's. Natalie had irritating clicks of heels, and Gabriel just never left his room or study. Besides, Flag knew his wings sounded like a light bird's wings, so the adults wouldn't even be interested in the noise. He flew over to one of the hallways that was split off from the rest of the house. Guests weren't even allowed to come near this place. Flag didn't get why, though. All there was in the hallway were pictures and paintings and portraits of Adrian's mother. Then again, Adrian's mother was a touchy subject, as he had found out when Adrian's mother died. That was when his father started getting all weird and lonery. Flag stopped in front of one of the larger pictures. Adrian had mentioned his mother was an actress. It was obvious she was comfortable in front of a camera. The woman looked posed and much kinder than his father did. Flag snorted. Adrian most likely got his personality from his mother. That bright, slightly naive, and kind smile was all too familiar to him, and yet there was a mother-like quality in it that he recognized in Tiki's eyes. For a brief moment, Flag wondered how Adrian would like having Tiki as his Kwame. She'd definitely be a mother figure to him, much like she had been to Holders in the past. Footsteps started coming near. They were light and like taps, and Flag knew it was Natalie. Quickly, he ducked behind one of the curtain-like fabrics that had been set around the walls. His eyes just barely peered through to assess his surroundings. He was right. A short-haired woman came in front of the large painting, and he sighed. Flag's eyebrows raised in interest. He'd always been a nosy one, really. Emily, you have been gone for quite some time now, Natalie said. Flag stared at her silently. Was she talking to a painting? She did know that paintings could talk back, right? Was she crazy? Gabriel misses you a lot, and so does Adrien. He sits in the garden looking at that statue of you. A son needs his mother, I believe, she continued. I gaped at her. Is this woman out of her mind? She's talking to a painting. I have done as you asked. Natalie let out a huge sigh. She took off her glasses and cleaned them with a forlorn look in her eyes. Clark wanted to scoff. Okay, this woman was totally mad. Adrien's mother was, for lack of a better word, dead. I have taken care of them as best as I could. I was never the motherly type, though. That was always you. Gabriel, well, to Gabriel it has it, and it will always be you. I have tried to make him smile, though, Natalie admitted. The black cat Kwame felt his stomach turn a little. Blech. Natalie was also a lovesick one. Wasn't she supposed to be an adult? Adrien was a kid. He didn't know any better. He had all the right to stare at Marinette like a drooling puppy god. Natalie was an adult with a job. Grow up, Plagg muttered to himself. He was honestly lucky that she didn't hear him. He tuned back into whatever the heck Natalie was spewing out. It was odd, but less gross than before. Eventually, she stopped her little blathering and stalks out of the hallway, leaving Plagg in there all alone again. He looked around, waited a second before flying his way back to Adrien's room. The kid clearly didn't even notice that he had even left. Thank God. Adrien was still on the phone with Alia, chatting away about Marinette's favorite flowers and chocolates and colors and songs and music, and it was awfully sweet, really. Emphasis on the awful. Plagg made his way to Adrien's pillow, snatching yet another wheel of camembert to look busy. It took a minute, but the blond boy eventually said his goodbyes and hung up the phone call. He turned around with a huge grin on his face that made Plagg begrudgingly smile. Plagg raised a brow at him. What's that look for? He drawled. Adrien sighed. Ollie is helping me with the perfect plan, he says. Plagg cocked his head to the side and put his paw out to say, Okay. Now what? The green-eyed boy frowned at him. Didn't you hear? He pondered. Plagg narrowed his eyes at him. Adrien, you were blathering like a lovesick puppy. Of course, I didn't pay attention to it, Plagg said dryly. Adrien looked unconvinced. Okay, fine, get me more cheese, and then I'll focus, Plagg said, crossing his arms. That got Adrien to laugh. You're so predictable, Plagg. The blonde-haired boy flopped on his bed, making Plagg bounce once. I hope she'll say yes. With the amount of work you're gonna put into this, I think it's gonna be harder to say no, he says. Adrien turned his head and smiled softly at Plagg. It melted a bit of his heart. Just a little, though. Thanks, Plagg, for the encouragement. Plagg stuffed the remaining cheese in his mouth, looking away so Adrien couldn't see the sappy expression on his face. Anytime, kid, he grumbled gruffly, but Adrien seemed to know that he meant it genuinely, because he smiled even brighter. Now, normally, Plagg avoided going to meals with Adrien. It was an unnecessary task, really. Adrien would be fine. If he needed to transform, he'd just go to his room, like a normal person. If he wanted more food, the chef would go out and bring some more for him. There's quite literally no reason for Plagg to go with him. Adrien wasn't in any danger or anything, except now with Plagg's newfound wariness and distrust of Gabriel, and the fact that he and his son began to eat breakfast and dinner together, Plagg insisted on going with them. There's still not a solid reason to go. Plagg just felt like it would be best. He honestly felt like Adrien needed some sort of protection. Sometimes the almost familial instinct to take care of Adrien sickened Plagg, but not to the degree where he'd stop doing so. Adrien was a good kid and kind of deserved the protection, even if it was a bit annoying for Plagg to have to sit there and do nothing for half an hour. And what are you planning for the dance? Gabriel asked, sounding almost suspicious. Flag felt Adrian nod his head rather excitedly. I want to ask someone to the dance, he admitted. Gabriel said with surprise in his voice. Flag could only guess what expression Adrian's father had on him. And who may it be? He inquired. Flag heard the clanking of metal utensils stop. Gabriel must have been very interested in the topic for him to stop eating. That made Flag feel slightly suspicious of the man. I think I want to ask Marinette. You know, she's friends with Ollie and Nino and comes by a lot, Adrian said, clearly trying to get approval from his father. Flag felt sort of bad. Adrian still cared about what his father thought. At this point, Flag just stopped caring about what anyone else thought. Maybe that said more about him than Adrian. You do. You do? Gabriel said. He was now sounding a lot more interested. Much more interested than before, at least. I do remember her. She is quite gifted at such a young age. Flag could feel the energy of Adrian's head nod go through even him. Yeah, Adrian said happily. We've been really good friends for a while and, well, I wanted to ask her, he admitted. Gabriel let out a drawl. You are rather fond of her, are you not? He asked. There was a slight hint of a smile in his voice, and not surprised Flag. Some strange look must have fallen over Gabriel's face. I believe you should ask her to the dance, he says slowly. The blonde-haired boy looks like he's about to burst from joy. Really? He says eagerly. He sounded like a toddler, but Flag honestly couldn't blame him. Adrian just wanted his father's love and approval. Begrudgingly, Flag could understand that. Have her come over sometime. And be good to her, Gabriel said sternly. Adrian practically bounced out of his seat and bolted over to the other side of the table to grab his father in a hug. Flag grumbled as he was squashed up between them, unbeknownst to Gabriel. Thank you, father, Adrian said, sounding close to tears. Thank you. Adrian squeezed even tighter, and Flag was gasping for air. Yes, Gabriel said. You must treat her with respect. I'm willing to make a dress for her if she pleases, he offers. Flag nearly chokes out loud. Gabriel, offering to do something selflessly for Adrian. As much as Flag hated it, he thought for a moment that maybe, just maybe he was being too suspicious. Maybe he was judging Gabriel too harshly. Maybe he really did want to change for his son and be better. He blanched at his own thoughts. Ugh. They were so mushy. Really, father? Adrian asked, sounding just as shocked and impressed as Flag was. He felt a movement, and Flag could only guess that it was a stoic head nod. Adrian choked something that sounded like a cry, and Flag had to sigh. There was no way he could not be suspicious. He was a skeptic at heart, but he could let up a bit. That wouldn't be too bad, right?